All right, let's talk about instruments and instrument logbooks within NuclearIQ. We provide in NuclearIQ instrument logbooks that allow you to track the history and the maintenance records on all of the instruments, and it's designed to replace a paper log or some sort of a binder up on a shelf somewhere. In order to set up an instrument logbook, you'll actually need to define a test stand name. Now there are two things that have to be populated prior to being able to use the instrument logbook. The first one is the test stand locations, and that is nothing more than where your instruments would be located. So if I had an instrument that I wanted to place in a hot lab, I just add it to the test stand locations list. And now when I go in to set up my instrument logbook, the test stand location will be on the list available for me to use. So to set up an instrument logbook, the first thing you'll need to do is come up with a test stand name. And you can see this table here contains the test stand names and then any systems that may be associated with that test stand. Now you can have multiple test stand names associated to the same instrument. So think of test stand names as calibration curves, if you will, or different analytes. If you had an ion chromatograph with 3 different calibration ranges or analytes, you could have 3 different test stand names with 3 separate logbooks, all associated to the same system within NuclearIQ. And that's for a different series of videos. But for this, let's add a new system, and we'll give it a so let's say we had an ion chromatograph, an ICS 2100, and it's an anion calibration curve. So I add that to the test stand names list, and now I can, by checking this box, tell the application that I want to set up a logbook for that test stand. So when I click that include in logbook, it actually opens the instrument logbook for us. So let me bring this on screen here. Now, when you first set up an instrument logbook, you'll need to populate some fields here before you can start using it. These top information boxes, which are free form, have to be populated. So let's say that my manufacturer is Dynex and I've got an ICS 2100 and I don't know, the serial number is 100B. Now that location is where we added the test stand location to the list on the prior screen. So you see hot lab now is one of the selections. And then in the description box is where you can provide more information about the analytes, the calibration range, anything like that. So let's say that this is a low range anion calibration curve, and it's 1 to 10 ppb. Okay, so once we've defined the specifics of the instrument itself, then we have to actually establish a calibration frequency and define the very first calibration. And that's so that if you later on decide to associate your instrument logbook to a method, you can have the calibration and the history available, the calibration history and the frequency available for determining the instrument in-service calibration status, as well as the instrument calibration schedule, which comes back and uses the calibration frequency and the history to determine if the instrument's in calibration or needs to be placed on that schedule for calibration. So the first thing for establishing the frequency is you have to select the period. So if it's an instrument where you'll be only requiring it to be calibrated when it fails a QC check, you would say that the calibration period is as required. If, on the other hand, you said that this instrument had to be calibrated quarterly, I would say then it's quarterly and define the date that this calibration period is effective. So we'll say February 1st. And then I define the grace period beyond the quarterly, which is 90 days, that is still acceptable for considering the instrument calibrated. So let's say that we had a 15-day grace period. Now, notice that below this, it says calibration must be done quarterly with a grace period of 15 days, starting from February 1st. And the next calibration doesn't read correctly. And the reason for that is because right now there is no calibration history for this to go back to. So I have to define a calibration by clicking the Add button, and I can go back in time and say that, February 1st was the day that I calibrated this instrument. Or I could say that it's actually further back in time. Maybe it was done back in December. So I go back, I define when the calibration was last performed, and I give it a reason. So let's say it was the quarterly calibration. And then I hit save. Now notice that when I hit save, the logbook closed. So that's how I know that all the appropriate fields had been populated. If one of them needed to be populated, the application would have told me you still need to populate that. Now, once I've set up my instrument logbook to use it, I have to go to the Tools drop-down and select Instrument Logbook. Now, when the logbook opens, the drop-down list contains all of the instruments. So let's say that here's that ICS 2100 anion that I set up. And notice now that I have the calibration as February 1st, and the next cal is due April 8th based on the last calibration that I put in on December 24th. If I want to change the calibration frequency, I simply just select the frequency when that became effective, and I hit save. And now notice that because I changed the calibration frequency, it made an auto entry for me that says calibration will be performed as required beginning on February 12th. In order to make logbook entries, you simply hit the Add button right here. And then in this field here, you decide if the instrument is in service or out of service. What is the date time that you want associated with the comment that you're going to make? And let's say that I'm going to take this instrument out of service for maintenance. And I hit save. Now, the instrument out of service timer uses the out of service checkbox, or in service, out of service status, if you will, for these log entries to calculate the amount of time that the instrument is considered out of service or not available. If I want to edit this, let's say that I meant to put in, I took it out at noon, I can simply make that change and hit save. And you see now that it changed the position, knowing that, well, at noon you took it out of service. And then if I want to make an entry for putting it back in service, I just say in service and define the time. So let's say that at 14:30 I put the instrument back in service. Alright, so now up above you see that my out of service timer says, because I was out from noon to 2:30, I have 2.5 hours of total out of service time. And these radio buttons can be used to calculate based on either a date range. So let's say I wanted to see from February 1st all the way through to the 11th, and now you see I have no out of service time. But if I were to go all the way to the 13th, it calculates. So it's pretty straightforward. It just looks at the out of service status to determine the condition of the instrument. In the lower right-hand corner is the consumable parts list. This gives you the ability to associate items on your consumable parts list to the instrument. And the part number is actually a part number and description field. You can type in any information you want here. So if you had details about the PO number, maybe your point of contact, any sort of information that you might find helpful for the consumable parts. So like in the case of the columns, maybe you want to say you have a PO and it uses, I don't know, an AN12 or something like that. And then you just hit save. And now you have a record of all the consumable parts. With the support documents, you've got the ability to either attach the document within the database as a digital copy, or you can actually just link to a file somewhere. And now by doing that, what I've done is I've actually associated the hyperlink or the folder location to the file and not placed an actual copy within the database. These documents can be any sort of PDF, image, PowerPoint, text documents, any sort of document that you can think of. It gives you the ability to create or associate, if you will, user manuals, images, flow path diagrams, anything like that that you may find helpful for people that have to come in and work on this instrument or need to have some information that supports the maintenance and care of the instrument. In the lower left-hand corner is the ability to actually define who will get notified if anything on the instrument logbook is modified. So by setting that, you can say that if someone comes in here and changes the calibration frequency, the calibration history, or even adds a support document, you will get notified that that change has been made. Now all of the controls or security settings for instrument logbook are controlled through the groups under the admin security groups. So when you click on that, you will see that there's an extensive list of controls for the QC instrument logbooks. So all of these things can be set to either allow for, let me change this to custom. So now I can disable, make it invisible, or make it read only if you want. So this is how you can say, I will allow someone to enter in a calibration history, but I'm not going to let them modify, or I'm not going to let them delete histories that are already in the logbook. So you can control the things that are going to be allowed within the logbook through this admin group settings. And because they are very extensive, you can personalize your logbooks and rest assured that the data that's there is still valid the next time you come back. So that is instrument logbook setup within NuclearIQ. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us on our website, or you can always email us at NuclearIQ or support@nucleariq.com.